Good morning, everybody. Hello, welcome to today's webinar. It's Monday, the 30th of September, and we're going to talk about how to recruit the best candidates. My name is Amanda Chadwick, and I'm a senior speaker at Peninsula Business Services Limited. Today, we're going to talk about, I think, quite a lot of questions that people ask us about recruitment and how to get the right person. So I'm just going to go through the agenda with you just to talk about what topics we're going to cover during this webinar today. And the first thing we're going to talk about is workforce planning. Then we're going to talk about the job description, personal specification, advertising and ways to advertise. We're going to talk about the interview and some sample questions, references and the job offer. And hopefully by then we should have got it all right and you should get actually the right person for the right job. So let's start off then. So, okay, workforce planning, okay. Right, this is the process that you should follow. We've got stage 1, define the requirements, stage 2, attract potentials, and then stage 3, select the right people for the job. And it's always a very difficult thing, isn't it, to get the right person for the right job, but you really have got, it is a challenge, but what you've got at the moment is you've got lots and lots of candidates applying for jobs, so you've got a really good chance of getting the right person because you're getting a real big pool of people applying for vacancies. So workforce planning, when I refer to workforce planning, there's the reasons why there's a vacancies exist. Managers produce a job description and job specification for each post. So when a job comes up, the managers agree there's a vacancy, they look at ways of advertising, they produce a job description and job specification for each of the posts that are available. So when we talk about the job description, what we're on about is a detailed explanation of the roles and responsibilities of the post that's going to be advertised. Most applicants will ask for this before applying for the job so that they can prepare and work on areas to utilise in an interview. And it refers to the post available rather than the person. How this helps you later on is the job description does form part of the contract. So remember that. What you put in the job description forms part of the contract. It'll tell them the roles, responsibilities, etc. But also at the same time, later on when the person's taken on and you filled the vacancy, you will use the job description as a benchmark when you're working with your KPIs and your appraisals and your one-to-ones, where you can actually say to somebody, you're not doing the job that I asked you to, or you've got to work on these areas because you're not doing that, and it's a really good benchmark. So actually I wouldn't even apply for a job if there wasn't a job description, and it can be simple depending on the job, or it can be very complex, very detailed I should use. So what is a job description? And I put as much notes as possible into this webinar, so when I go off the line later on you'll be able to access this later on when I'm not on the webinar on YouTube and then recording. So I've tried to put as much information as possible on this webinar for you. Okay, so a job description is used to set out the purpose of the job, where the job role fits into the company, the organisation structure, the main accountabilities of the employee and the responsibilities of the job and the key tasks to be performed. Why is a job description important? Well, a job description has 4 main uses. Well, first of all, the organisation. It defines where the job is positioned in the organisation structure, meaning who reports to who and who reports to that person. Recruitment, it provides essential information to potential recruits and the recruiting team so that they can determine the right kind of person to do the job. That is why it's important to have a personal specification as well, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Legally, a job description forms part of the legally binding contract of employment. And also appraisals of performance, it helps individual objectives and they can be set based on the job description. So, contents of a job description. The main contents of a job description are the job title indicates the role, function that the job plays within a company, level of job within that role, within that function, reporting responsibilities, who the employee reports to, for example, their boss, subordinates, who reports directly to the job holder, and main purpose. Also main tasks and accountabilities, description of the main activities to be undertaken and what the job holder is expected to achieve with deadlines on reports or targets, etc. And then employment conditions as well. So that's really the contents of the job description. So that's the recruitment process here. We're going to fill in each of these blue boxes as we go along, but the first one is the people that matter get together to decide there is a vacancy, and then together they write the job description. Then when they post the advert, they give the job description to applicants. This describes the tasks and responsibilities, detailing the job title, main purpose of the job, reporting relationships and main tasks. So then we talk about the person specification. What is a person specification? A lot of people haven't heard of them or use them. A person specification describes training and experience, personal attributes and qualities. The personal specification sets out the kind of qualifications, skills, experience and personal attributes a successful candidate should possess. It's a vital tool in assessing the suitability of a job applicant, and it refers to the person, not the post. So it doesn't talk about the job description, it's actually the type of person you require for that job, and that is what you would use. That's for you to use to get the right person for the right job, because you can refer to it and tick off the education, qualifications, training, experience and personal attributes. So personal specification. A person's specification describes the person needed to do the job. A person's specification can, therefore, form the basis for the selection of the most suitable person to fill the job. So how would you create a personal specification? Well, the most common approach now used by recruiters is to use what are important, really. So discrimination here. Attainments, example, highest level of education completed, relevant market experience, ability to supervise or manage. Aptitudes might be verbal reasoning, numerical aptitude as well. And remember, you know what, can I just point out to you, when you're interviewing somebody, remember not to use sort of phrases such as that, because you can confuse somebody. These are like legal terms, aren't they? So don't use terms like that when you're interviewing, because it can confuse your candidate. You've got to really make them feel at home anyway. So aptitudes. Interests, social activities, sporting activities can give you an indication of what somebody is like. Personal circumstances, ability to work shifts, full or part-time, and then the person specification have to be prepared and used with great care. In particular, it's important to ensure that the list of essential or desired competencies does not lead to unlawful discrimination against employees. So you've got to really be careful of discrimination here. You might have a wish list, but remember, that wish list is a wish list. Don't discriminate. Don't put discrimination on there. Be very careful of that, because and also when you're holding it up, people can see it if you're making notes. So we've got the job description in place, we've got the person specification, and that sets out the qualities, attributes required, and qualifications, attainments, relevant experience, special attributes, physical requirements, disposition, personal qualities and special circumstances. So you've got to make sure that you have a person specification in place, because you really truly can't get the right person for the right job without putting benchmarks in to know what you're looking for in the first place. So advertising, it's important to remember when advertising vacancies that employment legislation still applies. Any advertisement for a position should give a fair and accurate description of the job, including the job title, reporting procedure, how to apply, location of the job, and the duties and responsibility of the role. Also the deadline, remuneration, benefits package, skills, experience, including academic qualifications. That should all go in the advert. As an employer, it's essential to remember that it is unlawful. Be careful not to exclude any potential applicant through poor wording in an advert. So just a couple that I've seen: restaurant, woman worker wanted, there's one. Why is it a woman? Can't objectively justify it. Another one, an advert said salesman required, suit retired gent for weekend work. Why has it got to be a man? Why have they got to be retired? So be very careful. This usually comes from people that aren't experienced in writing adverts. So ways to advertise, let's have a look. We've got the recruitment agency. You clearly know who is responsible for the shortlisting, and also who's responsible of discrimination as well, because who writes the advert. So make sure, just check out the small print of your service agreement. Do they do the shortlisting? Ask for what their results are like for getting the right person for the job, because you're paying for this service. And make sure, if you're using a recruitment agency, use industry-specific agencies for your businesses. Maybe another one, job centre, they can be too stringent, so double check if you're putting something in that they can turn around and say that's discrimination. But even when you objectively justify, sometimes they come back and say we can't put that in there. They can just be too hard-hitting sometimes. Just be careful when you're advertising that you can discriminate, as long as you can objectively justify, and get that point across when you advertise in the job centre. Local adverts are only going to attract local people, aren't they? So why don't you widen your database? Why don't you put national adverts? You might put them in a newspaper, because then you're going to attract more candidates, get more varied people, and it's just not local people. And then we've got social networking sites. What we're doing now is a lot of companies are advertising their vacancies through LinkedIn. They advertise them on Google, they advertise them on Facebook. So, and this is a really good way forward, because it's word of mouth as well as social networking sites, but also word of mouth, friend recommendation. And then internet recruitment sites are very popular as well. But I'm really for the social networking scene and advertising jobs, because a lot of people now are using social networking sites such as LinkedIn. And, you get really... you get a varied approach, and obviously it's free as well, isn't it? So, and word of mouth is a good one as well, but be careful that you're not narrowing down who you're picking. So, advertise and make your advert stand out. I always say put as much information as possible in the advert. If you're going to discriminate, make sure you can objectively justify it, because you would be questioned on it. So make sure your company have a great online presence, just as employers do now. Future employees also research your company and your profile. I know I would if I was applying for a new job. I'd want to know a little bit more about the company. And I'm going to talk about my brother later on. And in fact, talk about him now. My brother, you've heard me speak about him on previous webinars. I've got a very large family, but my brother Billy recently applied for a job. He was made redundant, and he works in the social care sector. He works in housing, in difficult housing projects to get the right people, and also with young offenders, people straight out of prison. And that's the type, he's a bit of a niche job really. And he was recently made redundant on the grounds that they were relocating to a different area. And so he lost his job, and he found himself out there looking for a new job. Not only is it a niche industry, but also he found himself up against a lot of people that are being made redundant from councils now. So when he applied for a job, this one particular advert that he applied for, he rang up he'd not heard, so he felt that he should have heard, and he rang up the HR department, and he said to the lady, I've not heard, and I just wondered. She goes, you're not going to believe this. She said, for this one job that we've advertised, we've had 749 candidates. So, and it's really, I just flipping heck, 749 people apply for the job. Mistakes might happen if you don't standardise your process, and have, as I said, there's personal specification, job description in place. Make it simpler for yourself. But my brother Billy, anyway, was on the shortlist. So at the same time, he applied for a lot of other jobs, and do you know what? He was successful in 3 or 4 of them. But the first one, the 749 candidates, was the one that he actually got offered first of all. Now, at the same time as he accepted that job, he went for the interview. When he went for the interview, he bumped into somebody in a local car park. And this man, it was a woman actually, and he said, can you tell me where this place is? And she goes, oh gosh, you're going for an interview there? And he said, yes, I am. She goes, my husband works there. She said, it's a really good company to work for. They really look after you, They've got a great pension and everything. And do you know what? My brother applied for that job. He went for the interview, he really liked it, and he got offered that job. And at the same time, he got offered 3 or 4 others, I think it was. And because he remembered what the lady had said in the car park, word of mouth, that this is a really good company to work for, they treat you well and they look after you, my brother took that job. So even though a couple of the others offered a little bit more money, he felt that the reference that woman had given him in the car park secured his future with that company and that firm, and he decided to go with them. So, reputation does play a huge part. You go through the shortlisting, you get the right person, and then they say, well, I'm scared of working for you because your online presence is really bad. So make sure your company have a good online presence. Just as employers do now, future employees also research your company and profile. Now, I work with employers that actually research their future employees on Facebook, and lots of other social networking sites to get a good idea of what they're like as people. I'm not sure if I'm happy with that or not. There's questionable approach on this and what to take into consideration. But, certainly your employees are doing it on you. In any advert for a job, tell the world how great your company is. Tell them you offer, the Pensions Act at the moment expects you to provide a pension. Now, why don't you spend time researching a really good pension for them? And also making sure, there's a couple of things you have to change, by the way, anybody listening to me. But making sure that you tell people about that in the advert. We have good perks and benefits if you work here. So in an advert, tell the world about your company. If your budget allows, use pictures, and use real people. Don't use, models. Use people with lines, for goodness sake, not Botoxed up, but lines on the face, the real people. Use pictures and let people, so that it welcomes people. It draw my attention to your advert if you've got a picture in it. Make your adverts as loud and eye-catching as possible to get the right person. Make sure your advert isn't lost amongst all the other online recruitment adverts. Offer a great package and offer great prospects, for example, training and promotion. And when the person comes for the interview, tell them about, how somebody's progressed through your company. Somebody might have started in the post room and ended up working as one of your managers. So talk about people and individuals and use those as stories. So offer great prospects, for example, training and promotion, and tell people about it. You might want to look at accreditation such as ISO and look at the two-tick approach that the job centre has. Have good progression structure and talk about it. Avoid bad press. Make sure you don't end up in a tribunal because that's free press. And especially if it's a rude one or a high payout one, they always put it in the local newspaper or the Daily Mail. They love it. So, and you'll get spoken about for years to come. Look at your whole recruitment process regularly. I know we've recently looked at our recruitment process because it can get tired. It can get boring. You can get the wrong people. So look at your whole recruitment process on a regular basis. Ensure it's smooth running and it's professional. Talk about the success of your company and benefits. We often talk at Peninsula about how our firm is still a family-run firm, and our director, you can see him every day in his office, and he's approachable. Do you know what? I like working for a family-run firm, and I think it's great to talk about that because there's not many family-run firms anymore. So talk about the success of that person, how they started out, and how they ended up where they are today. Because, it's like working with a mentor, so make sure that you talk about that. So we've gone through the job description, the personal specification and the advertising of the vacancies. And remember, consider the placement, where and how to advertise. Consider the content, the job title, location, special qualities, who to apply, how to apply and level of disclosure. Consider the legal considerations. Oh, that's two words, considerations in one sentence there. Legal considerations, discriminatory language, i.e. waiter, salesman, and indirect discrimination, placing adverts in areas with a high ethnic minority, etc. Just be careful of that. Be safe. So now we're going to talk about the recruitment process and application forms. You've heard me bang on about application forms repeatedly on my webinars. Their use provides the basis for objective, non-discriminatory recruitment and should include education and career history, additional information relating to previous proposed future use of relevant skills, knowledge and qualifications. But for me, the main reason of using an application form is to get rid of all that rubbish people put in a CV, but also as well to standardise the questions, to have a bulk load of forms that I've got on file, but also to know that my application forms quite simply give me peace of mind because they say they are a legal document, and if you lie on it or give misleading information, we have the right to dismiss you for gross misconduct. And also, people can't lie on an application form if it says it's a legal document, because if they do, it's fraud and deception, and it won't be heard in tribunal. Or, so I'll give you an example of that. A man applies for a job, and this is the example I always use, so sorry if it's tiresome, but it gets the point across. If you're using CVs, here's the example I'm going to use. A man applies for a job, and he sends a CV off. He sends it by recorded delivery in his name. And a few weeks goes by and he doesn't hear anything. But the same job is advertised again. Now, he never heard from the company, and it's a telephone answering company. He then sends another CV off by recorded delivery, but this time he changes his sex. He says he's a woman, and he does get an interview. Now tell me how you're going to defend that. How did he manage to have that as a tribunal anyway? Because it was on a CV, and a CV is not a legal document. So use application forms. I recommend them. You cannot ask about an applicant's health prior to a job being offered, so remember that as well. So don't be asking about health on application forms or CVs because, it's discriminatory. And also, unless you can objectively justify it, you should not be doing it. You only ask somebody about their health when you offer them the job. So I've spoken about my brother applying for a job and 749 people applying. I've spoken about the application forms versus CVs. I absolutely love application forms. If you're using CVs, just check your shortlisting procedure. Make sure you're spot on and you don't discriminate. I prefer application forms. Some people still prefer CVs. And remember, when there's a large influx, mistakes can happen. So standardise your documentation and make sure you've got a job description and a point system in place. So we're now going to go for the interview here, and we're going to bring people, we invite them for an interview, and what we've done is they've had a job description, we've had the application form back, we're inviting them to an interview. We send a letter out and we say, and we're going to use interview rating cards to begin with, and we're going to use that alongside the personal specification. Have a rigorous selection and interview process. There's two purposes to the interview. It's for the employer to ask questions about the employee and the applicant to ask all about the employer and employment. More people are rejected than taken on, so make sure you have defence in place, good practice, systems that are fair and consistent, and less likely to criticise an organisation. So you set the scene, have a welcoming atmosphere. So we set the scene, we bring candidates in, and if they have a really good experience of the recruitment process with you, they're more likely to give positive comments about your company and reputation in the future. An interview is the most valuable and common form of selection, and it serves a very useful purpose for both the employer and job candidate. For the employer, the information that cannot be obtained on paper from an application form or CV, people skills as well and conversation, manner, their personality, the enthusiasm of the candidate, and see how applicants react under pressure of an interview. And also to ask queries or extra details missing from CVs or application forms. And I have to say to you, I think, I always say, whatever job I do, regardless of what I do, I'll always make sure that I thoroughly enjoy it. I'll always make sure that when I'm applying for a job, I'm over enthusiastic, because I have to be enthusiastic because I really want the job at the time. Now, I've only had I have to count on my hand. I think I've had I've had 4 jobs in my entire life. I've had a couple of jobs when I was a student, but 4 proper jobs in my entire life. And I've been at Peninsula for 12 years. So, but when I want the job, I really want the job, and I'll really prepare for that job. But I like to be asked, questions, and I like to get on with the person that's interviewing as well, because that plays a huge part, doesn't it? Because they represent your company. So that's my point to you, really, for the employer. Make sure you're choosing the right person to hold the interviews in the first place. Because quite often, the person picks somebody with a similar personality. So just remember who you're using for the interview stage, and make sure, for the candidate, they're there to see whether the job or the business is right for them, what the culture of the company is like, and the exact details of the job. So, interviews. It's okay to use selection tests if you can objectively justify it, and also tasks as well. I wouldn't give somebody a job working as a top chef in my restaurant if I didn't look at his reputation, but also ask the person to do some mini tasks and assessments during the interview. But I wouldn't just do it for one person, I'd make everybody do it. So remember, different types of interviews have different types of tasks and tests. And it's not unlawful to say you've got to have a good understanding of spelling, basic English, if you can objectively justify it. So the basic interview can be unreliable, as applicants can perform well at interview but not have the qualities or skills needed for the job. So remember that. You might want to use other selection tests, and that can increase the chances of choosing the best applicant and so minimise the high costs of recruiting the wrong person. Examples of these tests are aptitude tests, intelligence tests and psychometric tests to reveal the personality of a candidate. Always remember though, with psychometric, there's questions about the use of these. So you have to use, a really authentic person, that not just somebody that says they do it, but, a qualified psychometric testing person. Selection and recruitment of high-level posts. You can even send applicants to an assessment centre involving a variety of tests, role plays and simulations for a number of days, just to see who the leader is in the group, who is the team player, and you get this with the police, the fire, etc. Because it's a high level job and it's a high level post, they want to get the right candidate. They'd rather spend money recruiting the right person than end up with the wrong person. So remember, at the interview, no health questionnaire prior to offering the job. I keep saying that to you because people are still doing it. Remember, it's not unreasonable to have mini tasks. How about open days? They're a really good idea. Open up your company for the day. Let the local press know and bring attraction and attention to your company to say you've got 10 vacancies and have an open day and let them know, and then have attraction, get the right people for the job, have key people there, and pick a quiet day for your company. And then people can see the place where you work, meet the people, and you can get to know people as well. So I think it's great to have an open day. Have volunteer days. You know, get people, again, you might want people to come in and volunteer for a couple of days just to see how they perform. And apprenticeships as well. I love apprenticeships. I truly believe that you can learn so much more. Obviously, in some industries, that's not quite possible. You need the qualifications first. But I really do believe you learn so much on the job. You might want to look at apprenticeships. There's lots of schemes at the moment. You can actually get funding for apprenticeships, but also at the same time, what they do is they go to college for one day so they still get the qualification. I think it's an amazing idea. I love apprenticeships. It's a bit like the old YTS years and years ago, because you're willing to put up with some teething problems, but you'll get the right person at the end of the day. So psychometric testing for certain roles. Don't ask questions that discriminate. And a couple of, give you a couple of bad examples. I put that in there. I forgot why I put it in there. A couple of examples of bad interview. Saying to somebody, how's your childcare for, do you have kids? Are you pregnant? Are you planning on having family? It screams at you, doesn't it? You can't ask those questions. Be careful of asking about health at an interview. Be careful of, just using the wrong questioning. But also, an example I'd give you, this company had an open day. A lady came and she mentioned that she'd been off sick with stress recently. And literally the owner escorted her out of the building and said, well, this job is not right for you because you've had stress before. You know what? This is a stressful environment. Is she a medical practitioner? No, she's not. And, you'll have a case of discrimination if you're going to do that. So be very, very careful. So here's just a couple of, there's a few examples of questions I just put on here so for you to have a look at. Right, to remember, what you've got to do is when you're interviewing is remember to set the scene and relax the individual. Both of you, even the interviewer, be relaxed about this. What we need to do is find out about the person. So we need them to open up here. So we're going to ask open questions, all right? And to remember to ask the right questions. And don't try and be smart. Gosh, the amount of people that I sit with when they ask questions at an interview and you're thinking, what is the question they're actually asking? And they use huge words. They make the example, they use rather than just say, give me a recent example of how you work well within a team. They'll, they use huge words in there, and the candidate doesn't have a clue what they're asking and makes them really nervous. It's nervous enough as it is anyway, and especially if somebody's been out of work for a while, they've been made redundant, the confidence is knocked. We want the right person for the right job, but we want them to open up. We could miss an extremely brilliant candidate by, not asking the right questions. So I've given you a few examples. So, I'd say to you, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And remember, we're not going to judge you on your weaknesses. We just need to know what they are and how we could utilize those strengths as well. So give me a recent example of how you've worked well within a team environment. And give me an example of how you've performed when working alone. Do you manage okay on your own? Do you prefer to work within a team? Do you think get more things done when you're working on your own? And I tell you now, I can tell you straight, I prefer working. I love working with people, but I like chatting. So for me, I get more work done when I'm working at home because nobody's around me. I can just hammer all the work I've got to do, write editorial, do all sorts of stuff, and for me, it's brilliant. So you ask the new, the potential candidate. Give me an example of how you perform when working alone. How well do you react to working under pressure? Have you ever had to work under pressure? And if you have, or to targets and deadlines, give me an example of some of the companies you worked in where you've worked under pressure and how successful you've done that. And in fact, give me an example of how you've had to achieve a deadline at short notice. And you might want to say, because sometimes in our business, we have to hit a deadline, we have to get something out, and we've only got a few hours to do it. Tell me, just give me an example of how you've worked under pressure recently. Describe a difficult work situation. It can be personal. It can be, maybe giving somebody notice, holding a disciplinary, a difficult work situation, project, and how you overcame it, really. Just talk it through. Tell me why you're leaving, or have you left your job, why you left your last employer. Tell me, why do you want this job, what appeals to you about it. Tell me all about your skills, attributes and experience. And let me point out to you, they don't have to be relevant at any skill or attributes and experience you've got in any role. What you might find out by asking this new member of staff is that they speak several languages. They might actually have been, it might be at evening school or open learning and on particular courses to learn another language or to do Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, and it gives you, a good insight to the individual. So say, it doesn't necessarily have to be skills and attributes for this particular role you're going for. Just give me what exams and skills you've got. Give me an idea of what you've done in the past. What are your goals for the future? And tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about you. And then you're getting to know that person, and you want to reassure them right at the very beginning of the interview stage, is that, to relax them and say, look, we're going to, do you want a coffee, do you want a tea, let's, and have a time scale as well. A shortlist should be drawn up at the interview stage, drawn up based on job-related criteria, only in a fair and consistent way, which takes no account of race, sex, disability, age, etc. Prepare for, and hold interviews using open-ended questions requiring the applicant to give examples of when they have demonstrated the skills needed for the job and giving them an opportunity to ask questions, probe any employment gaps and refer to the application form and prep. Keep notes and ensure rating scores are applied consistently to all applicants and inform all applicants of the outcome. I do think that, you need to do your homework here. You need to look at the application form and you need to look at the CV before you actually go into the interview stage, because you need to know what questions you're asking and have a look at the gaps. And they might say, well, I was sick actually, I was very poorly as a person there. And you might find something out about them and, and also how resilient somebody is. So now we come to the job offer. We're now going to give them the offer letter. We need to state subject to suitable references and offer subject to, if applicable, a health questionnaire. It includes the statement of main terms in the job offer. You could keep a copy of that for them to sign and send back to you. Remember, this all forms part of the contract, and the statement of main terms, if you don't know what it is, it tells them where they're working, how much they're getting paid, who they're working for, the employer's name and address, location, etc. And that's how you run your life, isn't it? Everybody here listening to me today, I couldn't run my life without knowing how much I'm getting paid, what hours I'm working, and where I'm working. And that is why it's so crucial, the statement of main terms. And for future use, if you ever to change that, this is where people get offended if it's a detriment to them. So be very careful of that. Include the health questionnaire at this stage as well, and make sure it says this is a legal document. The health questionnaire, both of these will be used as defence for us later on and for you. The health questionnaire, remember, people lie on it, but if you say it's a legal document, you've got a defence there. So we now come to the interview, the offer, holding and rejection letters. And remember, send an offer letter to the successful candidate or candidates. Send a holding letter or letters in case the successful candidates reject, and send reject letters to unsuccessful candidates. When an offer, either verbal or written, has been made and accepted, a contract exists. Remember that. The offer letter should therefore contain a statement of main terms and conditions. So references, okay? The purpose is a simple safeguard in the selection and recruitment process, absence until job is offered. And honesty, so ask honest, easy questions. Are there, to your knowledge, any circumstances which would deter you from re-employing him or her, or would make it undesirable for us to engage him or her in the future? So remember, references play a huge part. So, ideally, it should be obtained before offering the job, but offers are made subject to satisfactory references. I would suggest they have a problem with. If references are unsatisfactory and the employer believes the employee does not meet the necessary criteria, then the employee can be dismissed with due notice, which may be 0. So, induction should take place on the first day and use a checklist where somebody's going to sign everything that you put in front of them. And you're going to sign for training, the health and safety policy, and include the word understand, because that really, for me, is a very strong legal word. So, induction, get it right, okay? Get everything signed, sealed, delivered on induction. So, if you do recruit the wrong person, act immediately. Signs are usually earlier on. I don't like it, but it happens. I work with people that say, oh, I've got a problem with so-and-so. And I say, when did the problems first occur? And they say, within the first few weeks of them starting. And I think, why are we here 2 years later and you're still putting up with it? So act immediately. use the signs earlier on, look out for the signs earlier on, include a suitability clause in the probationary period that says, you know, you're on probation for 3 to 6 months, it can be extended, you know, from 3 to 6. I'm giving you an overview on law here today, remember that, but also as well, put a suitability clause in there that says if for any reason you're unsuitable, I don't have to give you a reason, but I'm going to put a suitability clause in there that says simply, please leave my company. And then, you know, remember what the notice period as well. If you have got a notice period, abide by it. So I think I've covered just about everything there for you to successfully recruit the right candidate and ask the right questions. I think the key here is to find the right person, you need to make them feel at ease. So when you've gone through the process, when you do get them the interview stage, you know, try and make them as relaxed as possible so the real person shines through. Ask the right questions, be prepared, have the job specification next to you and their CV or application form. I hope that you've enjoyed today's webinar. I hope you found it interesting. You'll find it on YouTube later on today, not earlier on, but it will be on there later on today. And, you know, that's on the link www.youtube.com/PBS Press Office. Now, we listen to our clients and we listen to them. We have to do, because we have to stay ahead of our game, you know, and it proves it by being around since 1983. We are an employment law consultancy, health and safety consultancy, and we integrate ourselves within 26,000 companies throughout the UK, helping them every day from writing their adverts to producing the application forms, to writing the handbooks, to providing support 24/7. But what we have done is we've listened to the way, a large part of my job is studying society, legislation and technology, and I'm really for technology. And do you know what I hate? At home or at work, I cannot stand paperwork. It's absolutely irritating, but we need a process in place. So what we've actually listened to is our clients who also can't stand paperwork, and employee files and application forms and interview rating cards. Although we provide them, what we've produced is a cloud-based system for them to store all their documents on, and they can access it at the tip of their finger. So basically, if you've got an iPhone or you've got a laptop, all you need is Wi-Fi. And if you've got Wi-Fi, we can install the system for you, excuse me, and it takes seconds. It's so simple, my dad could use it. And what happens is you actually have your application forms on there, your interview rating cards, you have standard letters, you have your employee files on there, and it's secure. It's a cloud-based system that's secure. So, you know, if I'm asking my HR manager about Amanda Chadwick and she's down in Birmingham in a car and she pulls over, she can get her iPhone out or a smart device or a laptop, and she can access the Wi-Fi and she can see who I'm talking about. And also, I can actually request a holiday and you can authorise it within seconds. I can produce reports off there, target absenteeism, see why somebody's off. I can be sat on a beach in Prestatyn and I can have a look. But you'd probably be in Barbados, wouldn't you, because you're lucky, but I'd be in Prestatyn because it's only 25 minutes away from me. And I'd be sat there, and I might be sat there with a picnic and the children and think, I wonder who's in today. And I'll click onto my HR online and I can see who's rang in sick, who's in today and who's late, and who's actually pulled the wool over my eyes while I've taken a day's holiday. I can always plan my shifts as well. It's an amazing product. There's nothing quite like it on the market for small to medium-sized businesses. Now, if you're interested in HR Online, contact me, free@peninsula-uk.com. If any of you out there are interested in what Peninsula does and you're not a Peninsula client, or you'd like some free advice or for us to critique what you've already got in place, we've been around for a long time. We know, we live, breathe, eat employment law. Contact us at free@peninsula-uk.com. In fact, that email comes straight to me, so it's me that will respond to you. If you are a Peninsula client, you know, you've got our advice line, you're indemnified for using it. Don't sit there struggling to know how to write an advert. Don't sit there struggling to write a policy and procedure. That's what you're paying us for. That is what you should be using us for. I want you to use us as often as possible. We're there to offer training to you, either through webinars. We're there to offer you advice, support, indemnify you, and take you through every step of the tribunal process. We're there to give you peace of mind. Now, if anybody out there wants to have any editorial written for a magazine or the intranet, if they want to have a webinar or an event for their clients, contact me at amanda@peninsula-uk.com. I think I've about covered everything now. I really hope I've helped you today, even if it's just one top tip. And I hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you very much for listening to me.